AskRed by this is exciting. What was polite 30 years ago but is considered impolite today? I'll blow my cigarette smoke the other way while you eat dinner. This one hasn't made its way to Italy yet. My life flashes before my eyes when I don't expect company and someone rings the doorbell. Fair sure. Instant anxiety. No immediate communication for a few days due to lack of widespread cell phone use and instant messaging. It was normal to just go a couple of weeks without hearing back from a friend or even a few days without talking with a close friend or family member. If someone didn't answer the phone, the assumption was that they simply weren't home and would get back to you within the next couple of days, not that something was wrong. When I was 18, not even 30 years ago, I went traveling abroad for 5 weeks with a vague itinerary but nothing booked. I sent postcards to my family a few times, but I didn't have mobile phone, or email, etc., and the idea of an international call from a payphone was just lunacy. For over a month, my family didn't even know what country I was currently in. I would be pretty cross if my kids were to do that now. It would be really rude not to send a single message to say they were still alive. Placing an ashtray on the table during a kid's birthday for the smoking guests. 8-year-old kid taking a drag. Could I have extra ice cream with my cake? And is there somewhere I can ash this? Double quote. Stopping by a casual acquaintance's home unannounced simply because you were in the neighborhood. When I was a kid in the 90s we didn't even lock our door. I remember waking up late one Saturday morning and my whole family was gone but my friend was eating cereal and watching TV. It made my day. Edit. This was growing up in Kalahi, High, which was just a bit out from Honolulu, high in a low-income industrial area. So it wasn't a small town. And I actually lived in a crappy area at the time. We were kind of poor. One thing that comes to mind is answering machines. Back in the day, it was considered super polite to leave a detailed message, but now, with texting and all, some folks find it a bit much. Like, just shoot me a quick text, you know? Times sure have changed. There's only 2 instances I'm still leaving voicemail. Calling a business about something. Calling my brother a bitch and to call me back, he'll also leave the same voicemail. Edit. Fixed formatting. Also, my voicemail isn't just bitch call me back, it's bitch. Call me back, click. The post says 30 years, 1993, but my mind instantly went to the 1950s. I'm literally 30 and born in 93, yet I didn't even think of 93. Giving a kid candy, without asking that kid's parents. Or really, any food. You just never know if a kid has allergies these days. I'm super cautious and always ask the parents for permission before giving food. My kid has a walnut pecan allergy and some rando lady at church gave my kid brownies once without checking with us. My kid was about 3 at the time, so of course she was going to eat them. It was not a good time. Asking about someone's weight loss. I've gone from 250 pounds to 180 in 6 months and no one has said anything to me. I finally asked my friends if they'd noticed and they said of course, but they didn't want to offend me by asking about my weight lol. I lost a bunch of weight just before COVID. The only reaction I got was 2 people asking if I was dying. Using an ellipsis. Somehow it's gone from being a signifier of an unfinished sentence to a passive-aggressive attack on the recipient of the email or TXT message. Oh god, my mum ends everything with an ellipsis. Everything. Every email or text. It's so ominous every time I get a message from her. I asked her if she did it with handwritten letters, to which she said no. So why with messages? It's scary. You're being silly. Thanks mother. Reading news sports etc while people are visiting. Was thinking about this the other day. I go to my grandparents' house and my grandfather would spend half the time reading the paper. Perfectly acceptable. I look at my phone a few times and it's rude. Good call. I forgot about this one. Yeah, the reader, usually the male of the house, would read the paper at the dinner table or in the living room while the family was conversing, but still managed to be mostly engaged in the conversation. Look up over the paper with an eyebrow raised and comment on the goings on. Phone manners used to be a thing. Literally, an etiquette that society used, with a certain cadence. I'm 40, and remember it being a thing. When I call my 76-yo buddy, I notice he adheres to it. I do my best to keep up my side of the interaction. Please share some examples. Calling instead of texting. Generational obviously, but nearly everyone I know my own age, 30, groans as soon as the phone rings, but would happily text or meet in person. Deleted. Maybe not polite to do, but it was certainly impolite not to let people smoke indoors. My mom would get so mad at me because I wouldn't let her smoke in my house. Reminder that 30 years ago means the early 90s. No, I don't want to remember that. Thank you very much. Maybe more like 40 years ago, but a quick peck on the lips. Richard Dawson was king of this. Watching the Game Show Network, and old Match Game episodes, he was always kissing the ladies. He did it later when hosting Family Feud too. Weird. Girls. He was also kissing girls. Not just ladies. Children. It's really weird to watch now. Very uncomfortable. I have to watch The Running Man afterward. Dressing up like an old nanny woman in order to get closer with your kids after a nasty divorce with your wife. It used to be seen as a heartwarming way to reconnect with your family, but now is seen as rather intrusive to your ex-wife's privacy. I think once you get past the absurdity of the concept, that movie can be kind of progressive. At the end they find a way to co-parent and move on, which was a way better depiction of divorce than was usual at the time. I feel like other movies they would have realized they were wrong and gotten back together. But Robin Williams' character actually learned that he was a bad husband and his ex is way happier without him, and he respects that by the end. Landing up unannounced at someone's place for a visit. I'm curious where in the world landing up is used. In some places saying ma'am or sir. I live in the south where it's ingrained from birth. Even say it to people my age or younger, if the situation calls for it. More and more people nowadays hate it cause it makes them feel old, or my mom dad is sir mom don't call me that, or something along those lines. How is it an old thing? It's just polite, especially in a professional setting. I don't feel old when people say sir to me, but I know it's a big generational thing, so IDK. Please. Sir was my father. Call me fuckface. Referring to a woman as MRS, husband's first and last name Dart. I worked at a DR's office, and all the patients were listed this way. I would lose my mind if someone tried to list my name this way. They were still doing that in the 90s? You could still pretty much assume the role of a parent to random kids you saw out in public acting crazy, not impolite adult to tell some kid to pick up something they threw on the ground or to ride their bike in the proper place, address adults properly, etc. Nowadays I think it's less common to see small kids out and about on their own at all, and in any case if you did correct a child their millennial parents would definitely freak out. See, I definitely still correct naughty children while out and about if they are causing a ruckus or potentially hurting another kid, whether that's my own kid or a kid I don't know. I have yet to have another parent yell back at me because usually the naughty ones have no parent in sight watching them, or they're too lazy not present enough to notice or care. Calling a waitress honey. Calling any woman honey, now it's like nails on a chalkboard. Winding down the car window to smoke. Obviously smoking in a car in general these days is considered impolite, Just in case anyone thought I was implying that it was somehow considered impolite because your passengers would somehow want that toxic smell as well. In my earliest memories as a kid, my mom would smoke in the car with all the car windows closed. My dad had to argue with her and complain about it every time they were in the car for a good while before my mom finally got into the habit of cracking open her window. That said, I also have quite a few memories of sitting in the backseat behind my mom's, rolling my window down, seeing her tap her cigarette out her car window, and then I'd get hit in the face with burning ash. Apparently adding a period to the end of a sentence. I see your point. People confusing normal with polite. Are you not normally polite? Calling a lady's IOG, little sister, in Mandarin. It used to be a polite way to refer to the younger lady or to waitress. Apparently that's now changed and it generally refers to prostitutes now. Making your kids kiss and hug all the adult relatives who request it. Your children shouldn't have to feel the ick just to keep the adults from feeling awkward. When I was 6, mid-80s, or so, I remember hugging everyone goodnight once and one family friend mid-kiss turned his face so I inadvertently kissed him on the lips. Hella creepy, but back then everyone found that so funny. Commenting on people's weight. Sometimes that's not a can of worms you want to open. My old roommate and I went to the store. While we were there, we ran into her old school friend and their boyfriend husband. She had gained quite a bit of weight, but it was all in the stomach and it looked very round. Being that it was Vermont in the winter, she had her coat on. I looked at my roommate and she gave me the don't say anything look. Later, in the car, I asked her if she knew what the deal was. She said that she hadn't talked with her friend in a couple of years. Then she said, there's no way I was going to ask when she was due. If she didn't say it, I wasn't bringing it up. Keeping your butthole away from your sex partner's face. You know what? This is the best answer in the whole thread. Asking to have your ass eaten was considered rude back then. Now it's polite to pleasure your partner that way. This whole post reads like upside down world. A firm handshake. I feel like it used to be used to show you're enthused and happy to be there, meet them. Now it just feels like a power move. If I'd get an overly firm handshake before, it was that guy is enthusiastic and knows how to do a good handshake. To now where I feel like it's WTF is that guy's problem? Are you talking about a firm handshake, or an I will squeeze your hand until your bones crumble handshake? Cause I feel like the former is definitely still a positive thing, and the latter was always a dick power move. Calling without it being scheduled or a text first. Going to someone's house apartment without checking if it's okay first. Calling someone sir or ma'am. I swear I'm not trying to assume your gender, I was just raised this way. Moved to Australia. All strangers are mate regardless of gender. Blazing saddles? Seriously, walking through people's unfenced yards on the walk to school? Yep. I just had a neighbor complain about that. School kids walk a trail behind the houses, and across my street, the neighbor has that house where our road curves or starts, sorta. Anyway, kids cut through his yard along his fence to get to the road, versus the trailhead which opens artificially another quarter-mile up. He put a short fence, then a higher one, and kids hop it. FFS. I was 3 years old 30 years ago. It was polite to be 3 years old and yell Dewey. I sat at a guest's house and if they didn't have juice I was allowed to cry because at least I asked for juice. As a 33-year-old man, it is impolite to yell juice and have a temper tantrum when they don't have the juice I like. Saying, hey, have you lost weight? You're looking great. No, you just remember me fatter. May get downvoted for this, but getting pissy that you didn't get a thank you note. It used to be okay to comment on things like that, but now it's gauche to expect someone to buy stationery, stamps, and go out of their way. Thank you notes are a waste of paper, and in this day and age, it is not necessary for me to perform outdated social rituals at the sacrifice of my environment. An in-person thank you or phone call is sufficient. I feel like it was always a one-way thing anyway. My family would always make me write thank you notes for my family for gifts or things, but my family would never thank me for any gifts or favors. It was just part of the one-way road of respect, from kids to elders. Of course I am a teacher now, and I see some families are going too far with abandoning any respect for adults. BC we got some disrespect for last kids out here these days. Calling someone instead of messaging. I always panic slightly when the phone rings. Oh gods, either something horrible has happened, or I have to interact with a stranger. Oh, hi mom. Yes, I'll look up an address for you. So, I am a registered nurse and I spent the first year of my career at a hospital in Texas. I am a cis white female. An overwhelming number of my older, 65 plus, patients would use the term "that little colored girl" when they were referring to my nurse tech, who was African American. Send that little colored girl in when you leave because I have to use the bathroom. The way they would say it, I get the vibe that that was an acceptable phrase back in their day. And even though the phrase person of color is a widely utilized term in today's society, colored girl just evokes images of drinking fountains labeled for colored people and no colored folk signs at the community swimming pool. Ultimately, when it would come out of their mouth, I would noticeably cringe. Is it just me? Educate me. Edited to @ maybe it was more than 30 years ago that they were using this term.